Hello, and welcome everybody to the Mastermind Parenting Journey, and also Happy New Year. And today with us, we have Dr. Jinda, and thank you for being here with me today. Could you introduce a little bit about you to my audience, please?
So I'm Dr. Jinda Udompanjavit, and I'm a family physician that went on to study marriage and family therapy in the US. And I've been back and practicing for almost 4 or 5 years now. My initial work is also with families, but mostly in terms of when they are going through medical illness and having a lot of problems with their care. And so I would help support and clarify many things for them. And I also have my heart set on helping people heal, both physically and mentally, and also through their relationships and spiritually. And that was the initial reason why I became a physician. And now I'm able to combine all these together in my practice and have the joy of helping patients family by family to heal as a family through their relationships and also their health. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very interesting. So more or less, it sounds like you are helping the family and people connect with each other strongly on many different levels.
Yeah. Yes. I have found out that after doing my practice that the family stress is really can make a person more stressed and more sick as well later on physically. And so when I have patients that come as a relationship issue or psychological issue, it always leads to also physical issue that I have to also address. And then vice versa, some people come in with physical issue and I have to slowly uncover. Like I take care of patients with cancer, for example, with my team of oncologists, and then it turns out they have psychological issues and relationship issues, as well as things that has happened in their childhood. And so it has really dawned on me that childhood really plays a big difference in how a person really handles stress, as well as their physical health as well, that it could maybe turn out into something serious as well, like cancer and heart disease. Not to say that these are caused by childhood problems or physical psychological issues only, because there's a physical component. But we know now that adverse childhood events, which we call ACE, the more you have them, the more there is a risk for physical and mental illnesses in the future.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So basically that stress is the mentally things, but it could really cause for like physical illness.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow, it's very interesting. And like recently I have a call with my mom, so I discussed with her about children nowadays, and then my mom said that nowadays children should not have stress because they have many things. They have good food, they can go to school, they have clothes and no work at all. And somehow I think like many parents believe that. Like from your perspective, do you think it's true that parents should children should not have stress when they have many things?
I think it's sometimes maybe quite the opposite, that they do not have stress. I think they do have stress, but in a very different way than when parents in those days have stress. So I think when we look through the generations, people try to respond and react for the good of their children in a way that they have been lacking. So I think in those generations, like your mom's generation, the baby boomer and beyond, earlier than that, they did have to go through a difficult time of trying to, survive, trying to deal with poverty. They lack things that they actually may need, like food or a comfortable place to live, because they are at the almost end of the war, the World War, and before that was the industrial age. So that actually may have spurred the feeling that to resolve that kind of trauma, we need to provide our kids with everything they need, but then these are all materialistic. And what's happening is they starve the children from maybe a different kind of need, not the physical basic needs, but the psychological needs, because it is misunderstood that these physical items, toys and school and everything is enough. But what we're seeing now, what I'm seeing now, is that there's a disconnection in the family, the lack of attunement. Even though they say parents love children so much, and children know that parents love them, but they still have problems with addiction. They still have problems with depression. And it goes back to whether you have attunement or a sense of being able to connect with your child. And a child knows that they feel connected with their parents, like, oh, parents understand me. That's a lot of times I hear from a lot of teenage patients that I have, like they don't feel like their parents understand them. They don't feel like their parents like them. Yeah, I once like asked this question too with the parents, like, I know you love your kids, but do you like them? And then some parents, when they're not in front of their kids, are like, I don't like them. I don't like my kids. And I'm like, of course, the children will feel that, you know. And so there's some sort of disconnect of how you can really like or attune to your children. And if you can't attune to your children, or the children can't attune to you, and they act out because there's a stress about not having that connection, you don't like them even more because they're acting out, you know. Yeah. So sometimes the first thing I ask the parents to do is just look at your children. Just look at them and love them. Not just love them for what they represent or what you dream to build them up to be, because sometimes parents are so, you know, they envision their child, that their child is going to do this, do that. So they fell in love with the dream of who their child can be, but not the child themselves.
Wow, I mean, that is very, yeah. It's, I mean, it's
I
very.
think the children have.
Yeah,
the children
and more,
can feel that, right?
Yeah, definitely. So sometimes I even think is that when you have a baby, the baby should continue your dream, what you could not done in the past. You know, like you put a lot of effort. Like, no, you have to study good. You have to become a doctor or a teacher, and then whoever could be famous, and, you know, like make like an honor for the family. So it could also be like stress. And I think it's very, very, very important that you mentioned like the deep connections in the family can also cause stress for children. So what are the aspects might cause children stress besides the disconnected in the family?
So I was gonna say that, you know, as I'm taking care of patients and whether it's family or individual, there's a deep desire to be seen, to be heard, to belong. But most importantly is to feel a sense of self-worth. And sometimes through parents' expectations, as I said, or filling up a child's life with only materialistic thing, but not really being present and connected, the children don't have the necessary environment of their parents to reflect how loved they really are and how valuable they are as they are. They're just there maybe to, the children will misinterpret like, oh, am I here just, you know, to be good at this, you know? So do I have to prove myself so I could be worthy of love, you know? So this is a really deep stress. But on the outside, it doesn't, it's a long time before anyone could go that deep. And the child themselves, they don't remember this pain because children are they need to survive the environment, so they
Mm.
actually adjust and adapt so quickly to whatever is in the environment. Like they're okay, if this is how the parents view them, this is how it's going to be, and parents don't know this, that they are actually, like what you're saying, huh, they might want to resolve some of their failures or their
Mm.
trauma from the past through their children. So parents don't know that they're doing that to the child doesn't know that that's happening until later on they feel like this is not what I want to do, or they resist. And then that's the stress on the outside that we see is the conflict. So the conflict between parent and child, because there's something that is going on, that like different ideas,
Mm.
resistance, and child doesn't want to go to school, doesn't want to, be something that they're not, or they're not interested. There's a number of things that children can act out. They either become unfocused. So a lot of
Mm.
children have
Mm.
ADHD.
Mm.
Some become anxious. Some become isolated and maybe depressed. And some may be acting out by being aggressive and bullying other children. And this compiles up because the children then it's not a nice place anymore, the school. So the next stressor
Mm.
is the school, for example. School can be quite a stressor for kids. And we have different ways that children can be stressed from school, whether they, like I said, don't like what they're learning. Their
Mm.
teachers are not treating them kindly because they are not performing, or the kids around them are bullying or making fun of them, or because they can't perform well, they are not included in some of the group activities, or
Mm.
they're selected last.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things that goes on in school that can stress children out. Yeah. And
Mm.
now with the COVID is online schooling, so
Um.
even worse situation. So there's the parents themselves that can stress the kids, the school can stress the kid, you know. Also, other stressors that are hidden in our society is physical stressors like too much processed food, too much sugar, a
Mm.
lot of dairy when the kid cannot tolerate dairy, but parents don't know this, and parents have expectations for kids to grow tall. So some of them just bring kids to go see doctor to see what's wrong with my kid. Why is she not tall? So all these comments about you're not tall enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not, you know, as good in math as the other
Mm.
kid in the school, these comparisons. So that, okay, I digress. That's the parents category
Mm.
of stress. But physically, yeah. So sometimes we make our kids hyper when we don't, when we're not intending to, when we give them a lot of carbohydrates and sugars and processed snacks. So sometimes when kids really come into my office and they're like so hyperactive, maybe they're already getting a little bit of a rash and feeling sick, I ask about the diet, and then
Mhm.
I also adjust the diet for the kids as well, because it's actually a stress.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the next one is kids these days don't get enough rest because they're on the screen. There's something additional to what
Yeah.
we in our childhood days don't have, is the internet and the screen, and how the
Mm.
phone is with us.
Yeah.
It takes away at least 2 hours of our day without knowing, just checking on phones. And what to say that kids now can have online games and have
Mm.
games with friends, and they're always connected with friends. So more of that disconnection with family, more of that going into the game. So it could create a different kind of stress too, because you're so there's a lot of dopamine hit in your brain that
Mm.
really just can't it, the normal life of a child where you need to go run and play can't really sometimes compete with the dopamine rewards that you get on the game. Yeah. And so that takes away maybe the rest that you can have just by, not your mind always on some sort of a game or all the time. And talking about rest, I also see now how in school, they have a lesser time in recess, lesser time to eat. I was talking to my daughter. She has lesser time to eat and have recess than in my days. And also, like, they have so much more academic content of their school that they have to learn. They have to make media clips, and they have to do, research on the internet, and it's much more than what I had to do in my days. So I do feel for kids these days, and some schools have a lot of homework too, and so all their days are spent. And so when they have to do a lot of homework, they're stressed, and they have a lot of work, and so they try to de-stress, and they have game, so then they play game, and then their life may consist only of school and game and friends online. And then parents tell to me, I want my kid to go exercising. I want them to, go outside with me to the park, or just go out shopping. And they say, no, they just want to be in home. They have school. And then when you see these kids, they have one screen for the online schooling, one screen for the social media, so yes. And yes, another stressor is the social media as well, which we never had in our time. And we as adults know how stressful it is. We are seeing a trend that with more and more social media and more screen time, actually children have more depression, especially with girls. They have more of that too. So yeah, although right now the world is changing, that there's not a lot of more, like, kids don't have as much accidents because they don't go out and drive. Actually, this generation, they don't really care about driving anymore. They actually are happy for their parents to drive for them, but they actually have more high risk of suicide and self-harm. But in the past, it's more of accidents and drugs, but now there's a different kind of trend. So other stressors are these.
I think like all of those you just mentioned, for me, is very big topic. For example, like social media. I think on Netflix they have a movie called like Dilemma Social Media. Is so crazy. And now when kids watch social media too much, they kind of compare themselves with other people there. And then when you're on social media, I don't know how many real things they are, but everything with filter. Like the person don't show up with the real themselves online, and the kids look at that and say, oh, she has a very nice dress, she has very good house, and then why don't we have that? And they all feel like more and more stressed. But I think it's also that I think like you and I, we both Asian, so I think it's now had changed, but it's still very a big part of our culture that we don't tend to talk about stress or emotions, because even some parents kind of like label emotion. You cannot cry, it's weak. You cannot cry, or you cannot express yourself because it's not brave. And you are a man, you should be brave, you should be strong. And I don't know how it really impact on a child mental health for like a longer time development.
Yeah, actually, these "you shouldn't cry" is weak is ever since the trend since our parents' days. In the Western world, in this generation, a lot of parents are now understanding that it is good to share emotions, but they themselves struggle with that because they have that teaching from their parents before. So it's not easy because they know that kids should, open up. And the trend that kids are more isolated these days because they're, in their world more than ever before, because they're online, they are in their own generation, they know that their generation is different from our generation. It really, really disconnects. So here's a group of parents who know that it's good for them to open up the kids, but then there's a disconnect already, and then they themselves have been taught that don't cry, it's weak. So the parents never knew how to be able to be vulnerable about their emotions. They can't really be role models in this. So children learn from example, actually, the best. So parents could go like, okay, you can talk to me about anything, but parents didn't realize that they never shared their emotions even among themselves, mother and father. And then they don't share their emotions with kids either in a proper way that kids can feel safe that they could share with the parents. And what's most important is the parents know here that, you know, sharing emotion is good. But in the moment when there's frustration and there's a lot of, and the kids are crying and parents may react like, no, please don't cry. You can do better than this. So it's not a scolding, but it's still not really allowing children to, you know, be able to cry or be sad. Yeah. And especially parents of these days are not really able to tolerate seeing their children upset. They would rush to, so what do you want? More of that materialistic thing, actually. Now, with Asian culture that you're mentioning, we parents of this generation are starting to get the idea, but they don't really know as much as in the Western. There's still a lot of that culture coming down that, you know, shouldn't show emotions. And also there's a lot of the parents hierarchy, like power, like, you know, you should listen to parents. Parents knows best. And that again also suppresses children's emotions. They can't really share what they want and how they feel about things, because at the end of the day, it's parents say this is the best for you. So even if they share their emotions, they don't feel like it matters, because at the end of the day, even though they don't like it and parents acknowledge that they don't like it, they still have to do what the parents say. So there are still parents of this generation. And also, again, the same pattern. Asian parents don't even connect to their own emotions. So it's really a good thought to have that children should have their share their emotions, but it's not really happening in the family naturally. And kids feel really weird, like, how am I going to show this emotion? And I know this firsthand because I went to study about family therapy and learned about emotions. So I had it here since young, like, yeah, we have to share an emotion since I was a young adult. But then going to school, even better. Oh yes, there's, you know, research about this. I'm all in. And then I go back and teach my daughter, you know, all the different emotions. I forgot myself. But I was starting to learn more and more, because as a therapist, we have to really connect to emotions. So we start to connect, but there was just one blind spot that, oh, I need to be able to, you know, give this as an example when I'm with other people in front of my child, and then also share my emotions with my child. And when that clicked in, I guess all the pieces fell together, and she started to introspect herself as well and know that this is a necessary thing for her. And patience is really important, especially when at first you have never instilled this in your family before. So you just have to cultivate it, and your child might be not as easy, because she or he might be more of a quiet person, more of a reserved person, and doesn't want to share. You might in the past be somebody who is you know, more demanding or angry kind of a parent, more authoritarian or disciplinary kind of a strict parent. So the children you have to really work it through again, that, you know, how they see you too, before and now. So creating that shift for children to share more of emotions also depend on what was the previous way of how you and your child interact. And kids, they may be like wary, they're not sure, are you really changing, you know? So they will test you, they will see, but they can open up, and it depends on themselves as well, that their temperament and many things. So it's not an easy shift, but it's really possible and well worth it.
Yeah, and I think it's just, so I try to connect what you just mentioned. So at first, when you talk about stress, and like some children commit suicide or have depression because they feel like unworth it. They don't feel loved in their own family, and they don't feel that the parent really there for them and like listen to them carefully. Is just go to the end. What do you want? How much money do you need? And I think it's also really connect with the point that you mentioned, that like parents don't know how to talk about emotions, don't even know how to express their own feelings to their children, so the children cannot learn from it. And like for me, like invisibly what we do on every single day can really impact the child on the future if they don't know how to be who they are. It's not like the person who the parent tells them to be. Okay, be good, you have to be confident, you have to stand in front of the crowd and talk to everybody. It's just how I see the parent define confidence in the child. And for me, it's not really the right way for a child to really can express who they are, even they are like extrovert or introvert, but they don't feel like they can live their life anymore. So I guess that could be one of the reasons, like the child feel very isolated, and then nobody could understand them in the family.
Yeah, it's not as linear as that, like there can be many components as to why a child finally, ends up being so depressed and feeling like they need to hurt themselves or end their life. It's not linear, or there's not just one factor, but it's not also like sudden. Like there's actually an accumulation of many things that leads up to that point. So, and that means there's many factors involved. And when I look at, like, trying to understand what's happening, if you just focus only on the child, it's very limited. But when you expand and see, like when I bring in the parents, when I bring in the family, even the siblings, each of the siblings also, there might be in the family the black sheep, one who's not always like getting in trouble, and then there's the good girl, the good boy, the golden boy. And that sibling also plays a role with what's happening in another sibling's life. Maybe there's a sick sibling who's always taking away their parents' attention. Maybe the sick sibling, the sick child, is the one who's depressed. And then there's the parents who might be fighting. So there's all sorts of things that can make a child actually misunderstand that they're not loved too. It's not that the parents don't love them or don't try to connect to them, but there might have been something that causes them to. And a lot of times it's not about parents. It's also about the teachers or their classmates or what happened in the school. And that, when that happened, and then there isn't the support of the parents, because parents may be busy but are loving and never really hurt the child in any way, or the parents are not able to connect to the child in a deeper way to enable them the kids to be able to share what had happened. And then at the same time, some things are really bad that happened to the child. Maybe with an extended family member, or anyone, and then the child, it's just maybe one event or several events, and the child never was able to share this to anyone, even though their family is a loving family. But I've once met a very loving family. Everyone shares everything in terms of, good times, family time, even a little bit of sadness. But when it comes to really event that happened, it was like a sexual harassment, but outside the family, and it's so hard to share this in some ways, and it's very complex why that is so, as if sometimes some families never had any problems and they were always happy. Sometimes the child feels they shouldn't burden the family with their story. It could just be simply that. So it could be that complex. So when it happens, there's not actually some who's to blame or what. It's more of everyone just come together and see if there's like safety and more like open and authentic sharing of how maybe a parent feels that they're seeing their child, and then the child may slowly reflect. And sometimes the child themselves don't know what's going on. It just accumulates until they're lost. So there could be many things that has happened before. Yeah. And in an environment of stress, I see also kids right now are stressed about the future. Because the future is changing so much, and they're also connected to the internet and there's so much things going on the internet that feeds into a child's mind that parents don't know, and they can end up really worried and really like, so what am I going to do, and they may not be able to process that with anyone. So again, this is something that I see happening among the children as they grow up into teenagers. But maybe during their childhood years before that, there wasn't any real like family context to support these tough conversations. And I don't blame the parents or the families, because when the parents were growing up, they didn't need this type of sharing and tough conversations. There wasn't this type of environment going on where there's so much complexity of growing up. They just run around in the fields and play with their friends, and life was much more simple. And parents in those days, they never had to come down and because they're busy working, so it kind of worked. And then the kids, they just need to do their best, and they see their parents work hard, they work hard, so it is actually much more simpler. But now they don't have to work so hard, they don't have to do much. Then they got connected to the world at an age that they might not understand, and the world is getting more complex. And then the parents didn't know how to have this kind of environment and method to know how to talk about these difficult topics. And also they have their own expectations of how a child should be disciplined or take care of themselves, but child is already trying to adjust, and maybe there's many other things that they have to be focused on, that they don't want to make their bed, they don't want to do the chores, and that's where the conflict happened, and it bypasses other important conversations between parents and child about what the child is worried about and all that stuff. So yeah, it takes that away. So this is what I can see also.
It's very, I mean, so because talking about stress and like overcome all like the obstacle inside that we don't know how to is myself very difficult. So what could be your piece of advice, or what a parent should do at first to talk about stress, or how to help their baby to deal with stress? What could be the step for them to do it when stress happens with their children?
I think parents must first get connected with themselves. So there's a really great psychotherapist named Dr. Dan Siegel. He actually wrote and coined the concept mindsight. And it's about how we are to be able to be aware of our mind and what's going on in our mind. And if parents can actually have mindsight about how they are, what's going on in their mind when they're interacting with their children, they are the first to understand that there's emotions. It's complex, and it's not easy to talk about what's going on in their minds. And their minds are filled with emotions, and then their minds are filled with stories, and then there's the facts. And that's all that you need to kind of have to like differentiate in the moment with your child, and be aware of yourself, how you are interacting with child. Furthermore, that whatever is happening inside of them with the child, if the parents are aware that there's something of your own childhood in the mix of what's going on, maybe something in the childhood or in the past teenage adult years that you have certain traumas or certain disappointments and failures, those things are playing into your interaction with your children at this time. Maybe your child triggers something inside of you, making you so upset and so upset that, you know, they just stimulate you at a level 2. You went out level 8 already. You have to be aware of what's going on. Why am I having such an extreme reaction? So knowing this first is the possibility that you can then let your child know their mindset. And then you can help them to be able to regulate their emotions. So parents have to learn to be aware of their inner world, have a mindset, then realize, oh, my emotions are not able to be regulated. I have to learn to regulate it, self-soothe. Regulations can come through individual regulations. Maybe you can breathe, you know, and steady yourself, ground yourself. Maybe you can connect to certain resources that help you feel better, learn how to meditate, learn how to be mindful and relax. These are skills that you need to learn for yourself. Then you might learn how to co-regulate with your partner so that you can understand how it feels to have someone understand you, be there for you when the burden of what's going on is too much and you're so stressed out. And that's how you can co-regulate with your child as you learn to do that. And the last thing is balance. Your life, is it balanced as a parent? Do you understand what it takes to balance your life? Not too much work, not too much, too much of something that you end up not really balanced, and you might not be able to manage your time properly. You're not getting enough rest. You're not getting enough good nutrition and even water, for example. And at the same time, you're always working and not connected with people who can support you and nourish you. When you can't balance it, then it's most likely that you can't really, your child can't balance their life either. And also the other thing is parents then can't create a structure of balance for their child. So their child actually ends up living in a chaotic situation at home. I see some parents, they don't create structure for their kids, but the school does. So they rely on the school. And when the school closes in lockdown and kids have to be online, chaos is always happening. And so kids are not learning, and it's like stress for the whole family. So actually, that's what we have to help our kids do, you know, help them balance. So these are the steps, the checkpoints that you can, you know, look at yourself. Awareness of your emotions, how dysregulated it is, how to regulate it by yourself and co-regulate it with someone, and then create that inner balance. And when you have all this, then you can maybe go deeper into your story of who you are and what's going on with you. And then later on, it will uncover what sort of beliefs you have And then that goes to your kids, because what have we been sending messages to our kids unknowingly? What do they, what's the story they have come to believe about themselves, about the world, about their family? And what are their beliefs about how they should live life and things like that? Those are very essential conversations that we must continue to have with our children. But we may have to first learn how to regulate our stress. And in the process of observing how kids, how we interact with our kids, that's also part of knowing what's really the communication between us and the children. Is it authentic, or is just, the same old thing? I say something and she shut down, or I say something and she fight back.
Yeah.
And it's always happening like this, and then I get even more angry. So it keep going like that. That's not real authentic conversations. And we have to break that cycle first before we even go down to all these stories, or even know how to, clear the space so we can really help our child co-regulate their emotions. So a lot of noise and racket up here in the communication zone, we have to clear it up, but it's usually the racket and noise in our own mind that we have to clear up. And the most important person we must not forget, if you have a partner, is you must work with your partner and team up to do that together. Because a lot of issues with the children stress is that parents don't have the same ideas or are not on the same page about how to raise the children, and they're actually fighting about it.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on the child and the child's need, they're busy fighting about how to raise a child. It just takes them away from really connecting to the child again.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Clear that up.
Yeah, like you have to discuss your strategy before you apply it on your child. And
it's really idealistic, but it's needed.
Yeah. And so what I heard from you is sound like how you react to your child, like very, very important. And like maybe some incident happened in the past might can really, like, the child will memorize that for a long, long time. For example, that I have some classes with children before, so a few of them talk about the same things happen in different family, but what is that? So basically, as you said, now children like kind of addict to the phone and the screen too much. And then some parents might feel out of control, like, they got their temper. And for me, somehow it's powerless. They don't know how to talk about it. And then what they did, they just put the phone away, or, like that, take it and then drop it on the ground, or like destroy completely. And the child in the mood, like, what is going on here? Why he's mad? Why she's mad? And what am I supposed to do here? So for me, it's also like, this is what is in your mind. Like, okay, we know that we have to talk about it, but when we feel angry, we just do whatever it comes up. And what is your advice on that when parents don't know how to deal with the screen and children?
Yeah, so in application of what I just said earlier, slow down and be in touch of what is going on. Did I just react like that? And sometimes by the time you realize it, it's like the conversation is over and the phone is on the floor. And and even then you don't realize it until later that you feel guilty and like, what did I just do? But it's not too late if you actually are serious about, working through yourself. Just knowing that even if it's like past the whole event, but giving yourself time to reflect is better than not doing it at all. And I don't want to stress the parents out or blame, and this is not a blame game for me on the parents, but I truly understand that when I just want to explain that the reason why you don't really know what's happening, you're not aware, is actually issues, is a natural thing that's happening in the brain. It's not that you have a brain problem. The brain is actually being triggered, and then a part of the brain in the middle of the brain is called the amygdala, or the limbic system, is stimulated. and your whole mind is flooded with anger. You don't think straight. It's the thinking brain has been hijacked by this limbic system. And so there's a rush of energy inside of you, which you feel as anger. And then you're very quick to grab that phone and throw it on the floor because it's turned into a deadly enemy that you need to protect your children from, maybe, you know?
Yeah.
And because there's a story at the back of your mind, the catastrophe that your child may become if they don't study, you know, it has turned into that fearsome story, and it triggered you. And and maybe several things are going in through your mind, like, what have I been, did I miss a step? What have I been working for? What is all this about? And so all of that. But whatever it is, if you can't catch yourself in time and you catch yourself afterwards, that's the time to reflect and find a strategy. And the strategy is, whatever it is, as you start to be more and more aware, one day you can pause. Right when you're going to grab that phone, you can pause and go, I can feel this surge. You can feel the surge now. There's going to be a sort of like, either I do this or I don't. That's the part where you can pause and like maybe breathe, maybe go into another room and, soothe yourself, calm down, and then come back. At the same time, if you're willing to work even more faster and deeper, you can, get some therapist or counselor to help you work through what's all this anger about, because there's a story behind it. So, but that's separate from the skill that you need to pause in the moment. The stabilization technique of pausing and soothing is one thing you have to do in the moment. But to go back with your counselor or therapist, or even reflecting by journaling on yourself, you can then kind of also come the other way to understand why you're so mad. Now that two combined slows you down, pause you enough that you can then learn to take a next step. Is if you let go of yourself and look at your child. And this is the other technique that I've taught parents, is to start looking at your child as they are, instead of what you want them to become. Really, really look and observe and start speaking and hearing your child. So there's a part of you that you need to work on to make that moment successful in not turning into grabbing your phone and throwing it on the floor. Is you need to build a relationship with your child where you see the child for who they are. And they also know that you start to see them for who they are. This trust building relationship is going to be very important in that moment when you get angry, because it's going to help you see the child. When you pause, you can see the child. Okay. My expectations, my story takes the back seat as my child stands in front of me. What's going on with my child? That is very hard, but it's possible because you've done the work to build a relationship with your child. Then you can then maybe, start talking to your child. And that can be many, many conversations before you can actually, start to understand and be able to remember what's really going on. And then it's a whole new world. You're sitting with your child talking about the phone, yes, but it's also many other things, like, what is this phone in the context of what the child is doing to her life or his life? The child can start to talk. If it's a teenager, that's even better. If it's then they can really talk about, what's phone, like, what their life in the big context, and what's this phone use in this big context of life. And you can start to coach them in that. But if it's little children, then you can start talking about agreements and, how important it is to limit screen time and why it is, and you can start talking about that. The best, the end goal is to have these type of authentic conversations where children can start to learn from your perspective, perspective too, and how much you care about them. They can sense that and they can work with you. But before all that can happen, of course, is the pause, the soothing, the understanding of yourself. That will go a long way, and building the relationship through other things, activities together, and just, you know, just listening to your child about what they have in their mind, and what's their favorite cartoon, what's their favorite story, who are their friends. You know, these are the foundation you must have with your children too, before you can actually have a success with that moment. I call that the climax moment, that you have to kind of, you know, have many things to support it. And then that moment, when it comes, you can find that, oh, it's natural. You don't get angry. You don't have to be upset. You can actually, like, you know, feel bad that they're on their phone all the time, but can talk about it more better. I myself tries to. I have to say, it's not an easy thing, and sometimes I still feel like I do get triggered sometimes, but there's no, like, you know, that moment that I've done that before too. Grab the phone, and I have not destroyed a phone, but
very common.
But I have finally at this moment, like, maybe the most is like, oh, you've been on the phone for so long, you know, what's going on, you know, or a little bit of pouting, like, I don't like that phone at all. But, you know, as parents, we can show our emotions. That's the tricky part. We still need to show our emotions, and because kids, they don't fare well when parents don't have emotions either. They can't show theirs, right? Because we don't show ours. So we have to learn to be able to show our emotions, but in a way that is mature, right? So this is the part where we actually become role models of how we can learn to show our emotions, how it distresses us to see our children on phone so long and disconnected with us, and we miss them. So we talk to them about how we miss them and how we feel. And if we can model that, then our children can learn to model that too, can follow that too. Yeah. So it's very isomorphic, like whatever we're doing, they actually, so we are the limit to our children's learning. If we can do it more better, they can do it more better too.
Yeah. For me, it sounds possible, but it takes a lot of work on the way from here until the point that the parent can pause to look at the child to see, okay, who that person is, not who is the role model that I want to be in the future. So for me, it take like a long time, but good news is that it's possible. You know, like, as long as we want to work on it, we want to practice to share about our emotion and really be who we are. Like, sometimes I call, like, authentic parent. You don't have to be the parent that, you know, on the neighbor parents, or, you know, from somebody from a cousin, but just be yourself, and the child can feel it.
And, you know, I don't think parents have much of a choice. They have to, they if they don't learn it, then they're going to end up with a different kind of conversation with the kids day in, day out. Because you end up fighting with your kids, or else letting them go, and then they're not equipped with what they need to learn in life, because they have to learn on their own, for example, because of the disconnection. And then you end up feeling sad or depressed or a failure anyways. So you may need to learn it, but you have a whole lifetime of your child to you know, to learn this. And children are very resilient, so they're very forgiving of their parents. Actually, yeah, they are more than us. More than us as adults. they are actually they want to you know, they're forgiving. Like, okay, parents are busy, oh, my parents have to work, they're busy, and then they go do something to deal with their loneliness, maybe, or their disconnection to their parents, or their stress. So they're very forgiving. So we actually make mistakes, but then we can actually do them again. You know, you have the next day, you have the next day to work on perfecting, or maybe not perfecting, but really improving and getting connected. And if you're really into it, you can slowly get it to a level that actually is workable in just maybe less than a year. And then later on, like you can start working more on it, and it gets more deeper and more authentic. So you don't get authentic, you know, right away, but definitely you will feel the relief of the constant cycle of conflict, or, you know, a lot of all that cycling around, not being able to get in touch with each other. That's very painful. And that usually, if you really work hard on it, within 6 months, 3 months, you can usually overcome that. Then you can work on the other parts of the relationship as well. And also, one more thing that turns up for me just now when I was talking to you is another root of what's happening in these conversations that we cannot have authentically with our children, and always we're getting emotional and angry, is because we also don't really know how to manage our stress. Yeah, we have stress too, a lot of it. We don't know how to manage our stress. Maybe we cope by unhealthy ways as well, whether it's comfort eating, binging on you know, Netflix, for example, or video gaming, alcohol. So if a parent is you know, not able to manage stress properly and go into alcohol, going into affairs and break the marriage relationship, or goes into yelling and irritation and, you know, always putting blame on the kids, for example, so that they don't have to work on their own stress, then of course that is why kids also don't know how to cope with their own stress too. So emotions and stress management go together. And if you can do it both in a healthy way, then it will go deeper into who you are as a person, and that will go further into your purpose in life, the meaning in life, and then you can spiral upward from there.
And I think it's very important that you also have the message before that. So stress management and also talking about emotion, but of course you don't have to do everything alone, because we have therapists, counselor, whoever have trained very well to help you go through the whole process. Because sometimes for me, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So when you talk to somebody who have knowledge and have been working with parents and children for many years, so of course you can learn from them, and this can make your process to improve your emotional sharing much faster and better.
Actually, yes, I agree 100%, Hang, because you have never had an experience of co-regulation from your own parents. They themselves don't know how to emotionally support you and help you co-regulate. But these professionals, they themselves don't have it from their parents either. So it's like, for me also, I didn't have it from parents, but I learned it. So in learning it, when I help a patient co-regulate, they themselves become that child who never got the co-regulation from their parents, and they get that experience from me. And through the experience that they have from me, then they know, oh, this is how it feels. No, this is how it is. Then they can really do it with, have the empathy for their child, because I have shown the empathy for them. I have listened to my patient. The therapeutic relationship heals whatever wounds or attachment wounds, like, you know, throwing that phone and yelling at the child. It's an attachment wound deep inside. Okay, we work through that. Then the parents get it. Oh, this is how it is. And then they can, you know, work it with their child. And maybe the child might need therapist help if it's a really deep wound. But most of the time, it's not. If it's not, then I actually do more of the family sessions where I actually let the parents learn how to do it, and then can continue to do it with their children for a long time. and continuously and progressively when there's new problems that the child face, without having to come back and rely on me all the time, because it's not possible. The child should have that kind of relationship with the parent. So I actually let the parent know how to do it, have the experience for them. So a lot of times when children come in with problems, I only jump in if there's a real crisis to be handled and create that relief. But at the same time, if I feel like the parents need therapy too, I would actually schedule a therapy session for my patients who are for the parents too of the child who's a patient, and really work with them, because it turns out parents are burnout, they have their own issues, they're struggling as well. So by working with the parents actually, and the parents' relationship with each other actually can help the child without me having to see the child that much either.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yes. I mean, it's very interesting. So it's also, I think we already come to an end. And but I mean, it's very helpful what you just shared to me, and I think it's very valuable for whoever care about children or who is parent or educator. So I mean, like I already learned a lot from you, and I believe that many people would also learn from you. And it's just my last question, and also like curiosity. Do you have any bad or good emotion that we only should focus on?
This bad or good also reminds me of a question that my professor posed on the board. Am I a bad or a good person? Am I a good or a bad person? Go and write an essay about it. That's what my professor said.
Wow. Okay.
And I met that question again when I also had a counseling session on my own too. And then that's the thing. Is anger bad or not bad? Is sadness taboo? We have to go and be sad on our own, but when we're happy, we can share because it's a good emotion. As we don't have actually, cannot really answer if human is good or bad. It's not easy to answer that emotion is good or bad. And actually emotions are natural signals. Anger shows that somebody has violated us, that crossed our boundary. That's why we get angry. It's telling us this message. Sadness is because we might have lost something we love, lost health, lost our loved ones, lost our dream, lost our opportunity. We feel sad deep down, but we might feel angry at first too because we feel violated, but actually it's actually a loss. So we feel sad. And of course, happy is because something has been done that, gives us joy, give us a feeling of it's fun, it's funny, So yes, these are, if we see them as a natural messenger of our experience, telling us, how whatever had happened interacts with who we are as a person and what we believe in and what our boundaries are and what matters to us. It's just telling us the story of ourselves, of who we are in the interface with the environment. So there is nothing bad about that, right? But the problem is, how do we regulate it? Or, sometimes what happens is we don't want to acknowledge our feelings. It piles up. And one day when it piles up, I liken it as a jar. Our jar of emotions fill up, no more space. It starts leaking. And whatever comes in to trigger it, just a little bit, explosion.
Yeah.
That's not because the emotion is bad. It's we didn't know how to regulate it. We didn't know how to deal with our emotions, acknowledging it, processing through the story behind it, listening to it, taking heed of our emotions. So actually, that is dysfunctional. That is unhealthy when we cannot regulate and take care of our emotions and let it do its job, because we're not listening to it. We're in denial of it because we shut down from it. And bottle it up, press it down, goes into our body, we get sick. That's when it's unhealthy. But actually, if we just let it tell its story, it's the most healthy thing in the world. I also liken it to a fire alarm. If there's a fire in the house and you don't put the alarm, you said you close that alarm, and it's not a good alarm. It's noisy,
Yeah.
And then there's a fire in the house. It doesn't go off, it doesn't ring. Your house then become consumed with fire, right?
Yeah.
Because there's something that happens. There's something that is a stressor that is violating our mind. That is why it's ringing, it's angry, it's sad. We have to listen so we could learn how to handle that stressor, that environment that is not healthy for us. The environment may not be healthy for us. The way we handle emotions may not be healthy for us. It's a bad way to deal with, but maybe not the emotions. Emotions is actually useful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like, I completely agree with that, and I think it's very important that, as you mentioned, like, we should look at the emotion as kind of a signal, a message, like what does our body want to tell us. And I think it's also a good hint to view from like a child's perspective, like, okay, you look at your child's emotion, like what is behind it. It's not only how they act out, but really what do they want to tell us? Do they need our attention? Do they need our love, our care? Or it's just, kind of, it's, for me, it's not like misbehave. It's just, like you don't listen deep enough to really understand and really connect with your children.
Yeah. Virginia Satir is a family therapist who talks about the iceberg metaphor, where the tip of the iceberg is what we see, but underneath is a huge iceberg. So the tip of the iceberg is actually the behavior. And a lot of parents focus on the behavior. And a lot of society focus on our performance, our behavior, basically. But we don't really, but society, when you go as an employee and work, they look at our KPI, they look at our performance, right?
Yeah.
But that's how the society functions. But let us not be like that in the family. Let the family be a safe place where you go down beyond the tip of the iceberg, go deeper down, where the feelings, the coping, the fear, the desires, the needs, the identity of the child, the very bottom of that iceberg, that deep. You can reach all the way through the iceberg in a family that feels that they care about the whole iceberg and it's safe to share your whole self, expose your whole self. No need to cover it with water. That's an opportunity for every family, because you can't find it sometimes out there where it's all about performance, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes kids find that in friends. See, they find that in friends. Friends do accept their iceberg, but friends are only their peers. They only have the amount of maturity only at that level. And sometimes it could get really crazy. So parents, you may have to work through, because you have the brain to work it through. That's the other part. Parents have the brain capacity, but kids don't have that yet. And so that's the gap. That's why parents need to work through their own skills and knowledge, because their brain's capable of it, so that they could help their child co-regulate, because sometimes a child is too young to regulate many things themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Or even among their peers.
Yeah, I think it's like, for me, when a child's grown up, 80% is come from the family. Like 80% of their development, like from parents, even the environment inside the family, and also like really could impact on the child's mental health, either now or further on. It could either way, it works. Yeah. But I mean, again, thank you so much for what you share with us today. And for me, it's like really, really helpful information. And I hope that our audience could have their own strategy. At least now they know what could cause stress for their children. and what they should do about themselves first, and then go on the children. Yeah.
Yes,
And
thank you for the opportunity to invite me to share as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck for this year. And I hope to talk to you very soon.
Okay, thank you, Han.
Thank you.